Hello everybody, Dr. Anna here. Today's video is top tips for dealing with family members when it becomes stressful and a struggle. As lockdowns are beginning again and we're moving into different tiers of restrictions, many of us are spending so much more time indoors or at home with families than we ever have done before. And that can lead to all sorts of disputes and arguments and tensions and frictions in the family. And they can be really difficult and stressful to deal with. So I'm just going to give you some top tips for how to deal with those stresses. Now, one of the first things that you can do is try and take the emotion out of the conversation. I know that sounds really tricky, and it is quite tricky, but instead of reacting emotionally, you can just say, yeah, I hear your point of view, or I've got that, or understood. And that can be it. You don't actually have to engage emotionally. You do have a choice. Now, it's difficult when you feel frustrated in the heat of the moment. But instead of just responding with emotion, you can respond by just acknowledging what's being said and leaving it there. So the conversation or the argument can't continue. Now, that brings down the temperature of the conversation, and then it doesn't heat up and flare up quite so easily. The second thing you can do is set some boundaries. You can set some boundaries for yourself, and you can set some boundaries with your family members. So, for example, if the topic that always leads to an argument is, for example, COVID, you can say to yourself, I'm just making a choice right now. I'm not going to discuss that with my family, and I'm not going to engage in a conversation about it with them. And that's a boundary, and you give yourself that boundary. You can also say that to your family. So you can say, for example, every time we discuss it, it leads to an argument and we all feel miserable and cross. And so from this moment onwards, I'm not going to engage in any conversations about COVID. So you set boundaries for yourself and you set boundaries with your family. You can also say, look, when you scream and shout at me and when you are rude to me, I'm just going to leave the room. That's a boundary. You know, we can have a civilized conversation, but I'm not going to stay if the way that conversation is being had is when I'm screamed and shouted at. That's a boundary, and you have every right to set it and every right to stick to it. And they can be really helpful because it's like having guidance in for what you will and won't discuss, and everybody knows where they stand. Whether or not you all stick to it is another matter. But it can be a really helpful process. Even to work out what your boundaries would be will help you think about what makes life challenging in the family at the moment. And then leave the space. So, you know, if the argument is, or the conversation is heating up and tensions are rising and it's becoming increasingly fraught, you can make a choice just to leave the room. You can leave the room, go to a different room, or go outside. Say, do you know what? Actually, I don't want to be dragged into an argument right now. I don't want to go down this path. I'm just going to take myself away. Totally valid. It's not rude. Depending on how you say it, leave the room. Take yourself out of the equation. You can go for a walk. You can do whatever you want to do. Phone a friend, watch some telly, play some music. It doesn't matter. Just leave the space, and then the space and the environment will cool down a little bit. Distraction is another one. If you can use a bit of humour, if there's tolerance for a bit of humour, using humour is a beautiful way to diffuse tension. It can be tricky, but if you can do it, it's great. And then putting in some friends, putting in some social life is really important. I know we can't see friends in quite the same way at the moment, but just, you know, use your friends, call them up for a chat or whatever. And if there are some friends that you can share or dump what's going on with, that's brilliant, because then you can process what's going on. So sometimes we have friends who we just enjoy hanging out with or spending time with. Other friends we can, you know, download and debrief. And having both is really important. Once you download and debrief, you free up the brain space to go back into your family, and you free up the brain space to be able to tolerate a little bit more of whatever it is that's going on. So it's important to download as well as just to distract yourself. And then do a bit more of what you enjoy. So try and put really enjoyable things in your diary or in your day so that you're, again, distracted and not getting too caught up in your head about whatever difficulties are happening at home. So as a quick recap, my top tips are: take the emotion out of the conversation. That's number 1. Number 2, set some boundaries for yourself and with family members. Number 3, leave the space where the tension is rising. Go somewhere else. Number 4, use some humour if you can. Number 5, distract yourself and see your friends. And you've got friends who you just chat with and hang out with. That's great. And then number 6, Talk to some friends where you can debrief and process. Try them. I'd love to hear how you get on. Let me know. Any questions, post them below, and I look forward to next time. See you then. Bye.